Since 2003, this is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
The Sports Source is presented by Junk Be Gone, Pipe Wrench, and the Garza Law Firm.
The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source. We appreciate you being here. We are not in the Junk Be Gone studios, as you can tell. We are in the Albert Lounge. I'm John Pennington, joined by Bob Hodge, by Kevin Simon, by Jimmy Hines right there. Look, it's Sunday morning, so you will know if we got white death from above, snowmageddon, or if it petered out and we got nothing. But rather than sit there and wait and say, oh gosh, can anybody drive in? I just thought, we've got our own studio for the Sports Source Digital Network. Let's tape the show and do it in here. So we're relaxed today. Hope you'll spend the next hour with us as we break down Tennessee's roster now that most of the main portal moves are made. So we're going to break it down position by position. This first segment of our show brought to you by Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. When you need an attorney, go local, go with the best. Visit garzalaw.com to learn more about East Tennessee's most trusted legal team. garzalaw.com to learn more. All right, gentlemen, lots of changes this offseason. Lots of changes. Defensive coordinator, 3 assistants to come with him. Obviously, that means a new defensive system. New strength and conditioning coach from Indiana, who you made the #1 paid guy in the country. New nutritionist, but obviously a new strength program to go with the strength and conditioning coach. On top of that, you played the portal a little differently. You've got at least 18 people. The max you'd ever had before was 9. It was typically about 7 or 8 you brought in. You brought in 18 at the time of this taping. Maybe it'll be more. They've still got some visitors on campus, but none of those guys are going to be, we don't anticipate there's any other diamonds laying out there. Is it too much change? Kevin Simon, VFL, former NFL scout, I will start with you. Is it too much change in one offseason when Josh Heupel is going into a major year? Or, you got to do it sometime?
Really feel like Coach Heupel, he did what needed to be done in terms of overhauling the defensive staff, turning over the strength and conditioning department, just understanding that we're not where we need to be. So let's shake it up a little bit. And after getting a little bit of a opportunity this past weekend to hang out with Coach Knowles and watch a little film with him, man, I'm really excited about what's to come for Tennessee football. You know, we didn't really dig deep into the scheme. He was showing Kenneth, my son, how he could fit in and maybe some things that he could do with him on third down. But even in that little scratching the surface of it, some of what they do, breaking down protections, and they're not always doing it with 5. Sometimes they're doing it with 4, just based on what the opponent's doing. I was really excited just because there's going to be more curveballs. He took the words out of my mouth in that from week to week, you got to give people unscouted looks, and you got to, or maybe things that they hadn't seen, because usually it's a 4-game break from the past 4 games. Maybe you bring back a couple concepts that you ran 6 weeks ago. Right, to break down somebody's protection, because it's all about what you got on third down. So I'm really excited about Jim Knowles being in the position, and he's a linebackers guy by trade, and I love that.
Put a place in your heart. Jimmy, do you think it's good moves, but too many moves, or you like this, you're not worried about it? Where are you?
I think they're good moves. Now, here's the thing I would caution. Other than Indiana, a lot of times when you have an overhaul, you don't succeed right away. Indiana did with Kirk Cignetti.
Yep.
But most places, even if you look at Nick Saban, LSU wasn't great his first year, or Alabama's first year there. So when you make a lot of changes, I think sometimes it takes a year to kick in. And even as much as I respect Jim Knowles as a hire, and David Cutcliffe said his defense wasn't complex, history shows that the first year at a school, it doesn't exactly excel. It's that second year. So I do have concerns that when you overhaul as much as you did, that it might not necessarily kick in the first year. It might be the second year.
But my concern is, go ahead, jump in.
No, I was just going to say, to go along with what Jimmy said, I think under good circumstances for Josh Heupel and Tennessee football program, okay, change is usually a pretty decent thing. Coach Majors had a lot of change in his staff, and typically it moved things forward a little bit. But this year, with the pressure that you're under as a football program, and Josh Heupel in particularly, do you have the time to make these changes? And even though they're making you better in the long run. Oh, goodness gracious, we're going to be better in 27. We're going to be better in 28. Is this the year that you go that radical? Because if that defense does take a year to come together, do you have year two to show everybody this is what you got on the field? So I think some of the changes were definitely needed.
Yep.
But I just wonder if it could be too much change in a year where you really need to get it done at a fairly high level.
It's the Dave Clawson situation. He came in, remember, he'd flipped the tackles. And it was like, okay, well, the second year this kicks in everywhere I've been. They didn't get a second year. That is my only concern is, and you touched on it. If they had, let's say Tim Banks had left after the 2022 year when you went 11, you got 11 wins. Let's say he leaves even after you're 10-3 and you just came off a playoff. Okay, you're going to get more patience for putting in a new system. I don't know how much patience you're going to get from the fan base, even though you're like, well, we've got all these new guys. I mean, I just watched everyone in this town say, well, the way he handled the Nico situation, he gets a pass this year. He didn't get a pass this year. And I don't think he's going to get a pass for all these changes. And I think the odds are long that all of them hit. You know, I mean, you're asking a lot for all these to be good moves right away. You're going to hit some. Typically, some don't work, and maybe it's a year or two down the road. I just think it's a lot of moves. Obviously, he felt that he needed to do it. He looked at fourth quarters, I'm sure, and the fact that they were giving up 2 touchdowns and 10 points per fourth quarter, 14 points per fourth quarter. It's like, okay, we got to do something with strength and conditioning, et cetera. But I do wonder if it's not the right year to have gone all in across the board.
And that's the one that if somebody said pick one of these moves to hit, it would be strength and conditioning, not necessarily the defensive coordinator. Because I think if you look at what he did at Indiana, and that team looked as tough in the fourth quarter as they did in the first quarter, if I was going to pick, okay, I want to see this at this level, then I'm going to take strength and conditioning get better.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the thing that stands out to me as I'm kind of thinking through what Tennessee has done, you know, significant aspect of all of this is, think about it, Heupel's never fired an assistant coach or strength coach in his career as a head coach. This is the first time. You know, any other time he's gone with his guys. So it says a lot to me that, you know what, I got to do what needs to be done in this circumstance. Here's the one thing that stands out to me with Tim Banks, and I like Tim. He's a good guy, but in terms of his ability to demand the most out of the guys, because we all sat and saw it. There's times where we got guys on the field that aren't living up to the standard. I think there's a sense of urgency when you make these changes. And I think that Knowles, from a personality standpoint, the defense is going to embody his personality more so, kind of like how we did Chief. Chief's a tough guy, man. Knowles has that tough, grittiness to him. Tim Banks, you know, he doesn't have that presence, to put it nicely. And then when you look in the weight room, it's the same thing. I watched some videos of Owens. You know, it seems like, hell yeah, this is going to be the right guy to push guys past the discomfort so they can be as fast on the last in the fourth quarter as they were in the first.
Very good. Jimmy, I tell you what, I'm going to start with you when we come back. And when we come back on the Sports Source, we're going to start breaking down position by position. Has to be kind of quick as we go through everything. I want to touch on all of them. We'll show you the roster as it looks. You're going to get color-coded guides as to the transfers, the freshmen, and who's back. Do we feel better or worse about each of these positions? And we will start with the defensive backs next. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source, this segment of our program brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. Whenever we build new sets or an entire new studio like this one, I get my building materials from A.G. Hines Company. Visit aghines.com today. They will take care of you just as Gordon Hines and his family have taken care of me these many years. All right, back here in the Sports Source Digital Network studios, the Albert Lounge, if you will. I want to start by looking at the secondary, and you've got a graphic on your screen right now. The guys in yellow are your transfers. The guys in blue are your true freshmen. The guys that are just no color at all, they're back from last year. We got corners and safeties, but I will say Quay Moss there listed as a safety. He's really going to be your star. He's your nickel this year. Jimmy, in terms of changes, you like what you're seeing from this group? Do you feel better about it? I mean, last year you went into it wound up. You had Ty Redmond and Colton Hood, which wasn't the way you went into it. You thought it was eventually going to be McCoy and Gibson. You got Redmond and Hood. Now it's going to be Redmond and probably Kay and Lee, who came in from Auburn. Do you like your corners better or worse?
I do. And although I think it's going to be tough to replace Hood, I think Lee is a good player. But the other thing I like is now I think you got some depth. I didn't think you had much depth at the corner last year, and I thought there was a big fall off. You don't want your corners playing 75 snaps. So assuming Lee's good, and I think he is, you've built more depth, you've got more people to play. Plus, I thought last year with Redmond, first half of the year, he got beat a little bit. Second half of the year, he was pretty darn good. So I like the improvement I saw in him. I expect him to be even better. So I like where they are at the cornerback positions more.
Gentlemen, corners?
Going into the season, do I feel better than going into last season?
Yeah.
No.
I don't either.
No, because last season you had Ricky Gibson, you had McCoy, and I thought, okay, that you're really good at corner.
And Hood was supposed to be a solid
and Hood
backup
was
to those
yeah.
guys. Turned out to be
But
much
you really
better.
didn't have McCoy.
And so going into last season, I felt better about it. Now, I think Redmond's improvement was actually kind of startling to me because everybody kept saying, oh, he's got everything, he's going to get better. And you sit there and boy, after you watch Georgia pick on him and then you see other teams, man, okay, what are we doing? Right there is where we're going with the football. It doesn't matter. And you wonder. So his improvement, I feel with him, not having seen Lee from Auburn except to watch bits and pieces of Auburn games, I don't feel as good going into the season, but I feel better than coming out of the season, if that makes any sense.
Kevin, your thoughts on the cornerback?
Yeah, so in my mind, I'm looking at it coming out of the season. So when you look at guys like Kane Lee, who's coming in, and you can't expect him to be as good as Colton Hood, but to be a quality SEC starting quarter that you can win with, you feel good about him being in the building. As far as when you're looking at Ty Redmond, a full off season, in the program, should get a little twitchier, should get a little faster, especially with Owens and his staff coming in. So you feel good about him ascending, because most players take their biggest jump from year one to year two, especially a guy like him that's played a lot of reps. And we saw him mature as the season went on.
And he's also going to go into things now. I've seen this before. There's a lot of stuff last year.
Yes.
He's out there and he gets a move.
Exactly.
We threw him in the deep end of the pool and didn't give him any swim lessons before, just told him to figure it out. Threw him a life raft, right? So
Well, they had to.
Yeah, no doubt. It was baptism by fire, and he came out on the other end of a dark tunnel. As I look at like Jalen McMurray and the Boo experience, that didn't go great at times. And McMurray, the star, think about Tiki Barber. You think about some of the better stars. Tiki Barber was like one of the first, not Tiki, Rondé Barber with the Buccaneers was one of the first stars to play. Those guys got to be tough. Support the run. Jalen McMurray, cringing for contact. He didn't really want any of that. This kid coming, Quay Moss, the kid coming from Kansas State.
Yeah, moving on to the safeties. Go ahead.
Oh, well,
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to go.
Just as it relates to the corners, because he's going to be playing star.
Yeah, if you want to go there, okay.
Yeah. So I feel better about him. So, and when you watch Knowles' defense, even though things didn't go great at Penn State, really the offense kind of didn't carry their weight. Drew Aller, out of body experience.
Yeah.
And then he got hurt.
Yeah.
But they weren't playing well before. But when you watch his defense, the secondary guys, they're flying around, which tells me that if guys aren't flying around and sprinting to the football, that you're going to get your butt out of there. And that's what we missed last year. We didn't, like our secondary guys, they didn't show a strong sense of urgency to go put their body on the football in the run game or to even tackle catches at times. I think that's going to be different with this staff.
Safeties, we really don't have too much time to talk about it. They had to rebuild that whole room, and they did. And You look across the line, DeJuan Lane coming in from Penn State, so they know what they're getting there. TJ Metcalf coming in from Michigan, DJ Burks from App State. And then you got Idris Farouk back. Mm-hmm. I think you probably feel better about the safeties, considering what you just said about,
I think it looks good on paper.
Yeah, I think it's better on paper.
I think if you're just sitting here, once again, comparing the end to next year's beginning, I will take this beginning over last year's end.
Yeah, I haven't seen these guys hit, but I'll assume they can hit more and tackle better than last year's group.
Absolutely. I was not a fan of Torrentine. I didn't think he's a very good tackler. There'll definitely be an upgrade there. If Farouk improves from one year to the next, that would help. But I think what they brought in really improves the safety position.
And Farouk had moments last year. He did have some moments where he shined. Okay. When we come back on the Sports Source, let's move forward. Let's talk about the spot that Kevin likes. That's the linebackers. Linebackers, we'll talk about that position group next. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This roster breakdown brought to you by Uncle Jim's River Cove Campground. It won't be long, I hope, until the cold is past us and spring is here. Book your spot at the River Cove Campground right on the Little Pigeon River now. Check out their website today. John Pennington joined by Bob Hodge, Kevin Simon, and Jimmy Himes here as we break down Tennessee's roster now that the majority of the main portal moves are made. And we want to talk about linebackers. And Kevin, it's your old spot. I'll let you start here when you look at them. And once again, for the folks at home, it's on your screen right now. The guys in blue are your true freshmen. Guys in yellow are your transfers. So that's Amari Campbell, the kid from Penn State who transferred in. The thinking was he was going to take Aaron Carter's slot. Personally, he's just listed as one of these returnees. I think that was your biggest portal get in terms of the linebackers.
Yeah, without question. I agree with that because Aaron Carter, at his best, is one of the better linebackers in the SEC. Mm-hmm. Before he went down with the turf toe injury, he was leading the SEC in tackles. So getting him back, huge coup. And then when you look at Amari Campbell, I know the guys from Penn State, their staff, Jim Knowles, the rest of the guys, really excited about his addition coming down. He was a green dot guy for them last season. Mm-hmm. He's the voice of the defense. So between him being able to understand the scheme and teach guys like Aaron Carter, Edwin Spillman, T. Lander, and the rest of the gang, this is how we're doing. We're better at that position. Campbell, coming from Penn State, not quite as athletic as Carter, but they're both three-down guys who bring a lot to the defense. I'm really excited about the group. Inge usually plays about four guys. So, I mean, what does that look like? Obviously Carter and Campbell are going to be two of them. Spillman's probably going to be the third. And then is it Perlotti? Is it T-Lander? Maybe he rolls five through because there's times where he played a guy like Ben Bolden who's a walk-on last year. So really excited about the group. They'll be better than they were a year ago.
And let me also throw this out there. If you're looking at the list and you see, well, where's so-and-so? I didn't put everybody on here. If you didn't play much last year, you may not be on here. So folks, parents, you don't need to email me. I apologize. Not all kids made the list. So if there's somebody off there, that's why. Okay, Bob, your thoughts on the linebacker. You feel better?
Yeah, and you stole my thunder because I thought Aaron Carter was your biggest get out of the portal. And so I think bringing him back, your defense wasn't good last year, but you weren't bad at linebacker. You could have been better. I think Carter he could be better in going back and dropping into pass coverage. There's things they could all do better. But yeah, I like your linebacker core.
Speaking of going in, did you talk to Jim Knowles about setting the edge?
Yeah.
Jimmy, your thoughts on the linebackers?
I really like this group. Before Carter came back, I was told Campbell would be the green dot guy probably. But then you talk about Carter, who I think is an excellent player when healthy. And I think
and I like the fact he played through some injuries last year too.
Yes.
Yeah. Perlotti, I think, is a really good player. Spillman had a 13 tackle game last year. He's got a lot of ability. I think it's one of the stronger units on this team. I really like where they are at linebacker.
I think on paper it does look better. I wonder about Campbell and his feelings about Carter coming back at the last second, because that was, for some of us, that was manna from heaven. Nobody expected it. He'd already declared for the NFL. Mm-hmm. And then when he came back, it looked like he was going anywhere but Tennessee. And then for Tennessee to work all that out and get him back here, that's not one of those, I don't think, where Campbell could have thought, well, there's a possibility he'll be back. So I do wonder what his feelings are. And that's what you run into in the portal.
Sure. And I think you'll probably see them together.
Yeah, I mean, kids want to play.
Yeah.
And the kids now, they're like more understanding of other guys they're more accepting of.
As long as they're getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, hey, show me the money, you know. But I mean, he's going to be on the field. And honestly, because he's called the defense, they'll do it in conjunction. But I'm pretty sure that Campbell will be the green dot guy. So then there's a conversation. All right, well, does Carter get his feelings hurt that he's not the green?
Yep.
Listen, at the end of the day, he's well compensated. He's not coming back on a hometown discount. Aaron Carter was well compensated to come back. Yeah. Had leverage from who you had to battle against, the Georgias, the Texases, the Missouris, the Cows of the world. But it was a big coup to get him back. Now, let's get him. He has to have surgery. Let's get him healthy and get him going so he can maximize his draft status.
Yeah, I don't know how happy Carter was. I said I liked it earlier that he played through injury. I don't know how happy he was about that. Might have been one of the things they had to overcome in getting him back. But I did like the fact that you had a couple of guys on that defense last year. The defense didn't look great, but there were a couple of guys. We said after that Oklahoma game, all right, playoffs are off the table. How many of these guys are going to make business decisions and say, I can't come back, I got turf toe, I can't play? He was not a guy who did that. He kept playing.
One of the key things with this linebacking group, to me, they need to improve in pass coverage. That was the area where I thought they struggled a little bit, but if they can upgrade that, I think this is a really good unit.
All right, very good. Tell you what, when we come back on the Sports Source, we're going to talk about the defensive line. So we'll look at the defensive line, then we got the offensive line. We'll run through the whole offense, winding up with quarterbacks. And later in the show, we're also going to make our season predictions. So we're going to have to go on the record with our predictions for what the Vols are going to do in 2026. That's when we come back. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine, celebrating their 50th year this year. They've got unbelievable rebates going on right now. And if their selection wasn't great enough, they're now East Tennessee's new dealer for the full line of family offshore and bay-style boats from Sea Hunt Boats. madmarine.com. Man, they carry every kind of boat you could ever possibly want. There's no better place to buy a boat. All right, I want to talk about the defensive line, and we've got a graphic for you on the screen. Once again, blue is true freshmen. Gold are the transfers who came in. You see them broken down by ends, tackles, and Leos, which is the thesaurus, the lexicon that they use over there at Tennessee. The big guy to watch there is Chaz Coleman coming in from Penn State. Jordan Ross left the 5-star to LSU, so you spent and got a 5-star Leo that Jim Knowles is familiar with. You also brought in Jordan Norman from Tulane. You brought in Xavier Gillum, tackle from Penn State. And then you've got Devin Hobbs back. The rest of the guys coming back, it's not exactly star-laden. It's fallen off from a couple of years ago.
If, despite the fact that there are unknowns with new guys, this is where I'm most concerned about this defense going into this year. Because last year, I felt really good about your defensive front, even though I think it underperformed. Still going into the year, I thought, okay, you've got some guys here that can really make a difference. I don't know where the difference makers going into the season are. Now, they very well may emerge in by October. We're sitting there going, holy cow, look at this. But right now, this is my big area of concern for the defense.
And last year you had depth issues going in that I just thought, you know what, Garner will get the most out of these guys. He plays a big rotation anyway. Yes. Well, the guys that were in the rotation simply weren't as good as the guys that were in the rotation the year before. So I didn't take the depth issue as seriously. I'm like you. I'm concerned a little bit on the defensive line because so much of it is unproven. That doesn't mean it's not going to come through.
Doesn't mean it's not good. No,
but
it doesn't.
I do have questions there. Jimmy, Kevin, your thoughts on the D-line?
Coleman needs to be really good. He needs to be a difference maker, and he does have the potential to do that. A year ago, I thought the defensive line did underachieve a little bit. I expected more, but I also realized they missed Omar Norman a lot and James Pierce and even Omari Thomas more than I expected. So the group didn't play quite as well as I thought. They had a couple of injuries last year, but I am concerned about Rodney likes to play 10 people. I don't see 10 people on this list that I think can win at an SEC level. So I do think it's a concern. You may see some of these guys playing more snaps than Garner's used to.
Yeah, you're losing seniors in Bryson Eason, Jackson Moy, Tyree West, Dominic Bailey, and Josephs. And they weren't exactly what you wanted last year. The guy that I really like, just from being able to see a little bit of film, man, I really like Xavier Gillum coming over. He's a guy that played a number of snaps for him, even though he didn't start, he was in the rotation. And really, over anybody that we had that's left or coming back, he's got more mass to root himself in the run, be able to restrict the wash and make one-arm tackles in the hole. So he's as a nose tackle, he's gonna help to firm up the run defense. And then I was pretty disappointed we lost Jordan Ross. Really felt like he was primed to make a jump. Chaz Coleman, it's interesting because he was like a 4-star coming out. He took trips to Penn State, Kentucky. Those are the two teams vying for him. And now he's like ranked 7th in the portal. Well, I watched his film a little bit. I think he had like 12 or 13 tackles a sack and a half. I don't know who makes these rankings.
Well, Colton Hood last year was the number 52 corner in the portal.
Listen, the transfer portal rankings are bogus. It's like Coach Saban just said. These guys, the guys making these rankings, they wouldn't know their butt from a handful of sand. So, so with Chaz Coleman, I hope he's got ability, but I'd much rather have a world with Jordan Ross in him and Jordan Norman, Jordan Norman's actually played some and done some things. Had 6.5 sacks last year, but he didn't get enough tackles in the portal. I was hoping you get 3 guys, and we only got 1. I think the plan didn't quite hit the mark in terms of swinging at some of these guys in the portal.
And it's funny, they loaded up on defense, but that is kind of the one area where, when I was breaking it down, we did a thing on the Sports Source Digital Network. We broke it down the other day, and it's like safeties. Lord, they got 4 of them.
Yeah.
Well, Quay Moss he's listed as a safety. He's actually star, but still, DBs you got tons of them. Linebackers but D-line, 1 guy in terms of tackles. So I do think that's an issue in terms of moving forward. Do you agree that that's the biggest D-line, linebackers, secondary? You got more questions at D-line?
Oh, without question, especially interior defensive line, just because there was times we weren't stopping the run. And
that was with all those names
that
you ran through.
That was with those 5
those
guys.
names are gone.
Yeah, those guys are gone. So now, Nate Robinson, if we can keep him healthy, but he's been a rotational piece. I like Davian Hobbs moving into a starting role. Yeah. Ethan Utley, Isaiah Campbell, are those guys gonna make a jump? The Marion Dyes of the world. So it'll be interesting to see who of that freshman group ascending to the sophomore class. We're gonna need one of those 2 guys to step up in a big way.
And is this where a change in your strength and conditioning maybe get you somewhere quicker than maybe it would under the old system? Who knows?
Yeah. And the other thing to note is this an area, there's still this debate. You look at Alabama, you look at Georgia, you look at Ohio State, they build recruiting high school kids. And then they go and they add on through the portal. Other schools, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Indiana didn't do it with stars, but they brought in all those guys from JMU and other places. You build with portal. Heupel has built more of that Ohio State range. Big classes. You've got, 4, 7? On your defensive line, you got 10 freshmen.
Oof, it's a lot.
10. Is this an area where that comes back to bite you a little bit? Where it may pay off 3 years down the road if you're still here. And that's the other problem is how many of these guys are going to stick around. So this may be, for those people that say you signed too many young guys, start focusing more on the portal, this would be an issue on the defense, area on the defense where I would say 10 guys in your defensive line who are freshmen may be a bit much. All right. When we come back, we're going to switch over to the offensive line. I'll try and hang on to my script, and we'll talk about the O-line and look at what's going to be in front of what we assume will be George McIntyre, your starting quarterback. But we'll get into that later. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things, the Super Bowl, March Madness, then Vol baseball. Make sure you watch in style by buying new home theater seats from Games and Things. That's where I bought mine over the years. OurGameRoom.com is where you can learn more, or get to the corner of Lovell Road and Kingston Pike. Scott and Lisa Mellon will take good care of you at Games and Things. Okay, back with Jimmy Himes, Kevin Simon, Bob Hodge. We're breaking down the Tennessee roster. So let's take a look at the offensive line. Let's move across to the other side of the ball. Once again, just a reminder, blue, true freshman, yellow, transfer. You see a couple of transfers there in Ori Williams from LSU, Donovan Haslam from West Virginia. He's the giant guy, 340 pounds, 6'3". I think the basic gist of this, and this is where we'll start. Left tackle will be David Sanders. Right tackle, penciled in Ori Williams at the moment. Jesse Perry could play right tackle, but he's penciled in at right guard. Donovan Haslam's going to be behind him, so if you need, you could put Haslam in there and shift Perry back to tackle if you need. Sam Pendleton back at center. Not sure what their backup center plan is. Wendell Moy at left guard, but you've still got Sham Umarov, who played pretty well at times last year, I thought, filling in. And then, again, David Sanders at left tackle. So that's your main 7. In terms of depth, it feels to me like you've actually got one more guy than you did last year. But do you feel better about this group considering David Sanders moving to left tackle Lance Hurd moving to Kentucky? Bob, whoever.
Go ahead.
I don't feel as good because I really like the combination of Sanders and Lance Hurd. And you didn't bring in an offensive lineman, in my opinion, that can hang with Hurd. So I think there's a drop-off. To me, you brought in probably 2 offensive linemen that could very well be backups. So I don't feel as good about it. I thought Hurd had a nice year at left tackle, and I think Sanders is a good player, but I just think Hurd's too big of a loss, and in my opinion, you didn't replace it.
You're replacing a 5-star guy. Now, again, this gets into the rating stuff, but you're replacing a 5-star Hurd who did play well last year with a 3-star, I think, in Ori Williams. Kevin, he played, 2 games?
Yeah, he started 2 games due to injuries last year. Yeah.
What do you think about the offensive line? We'll get this first.
Yeah, I think I'm right here with Jimmy. I think you take a step back. I really thought Lance Hurd played at a high level, and if he would have jumped into the draft, thought he would have been seen by some as a developmental starter at the tackle position. Now, probably playing right tackle, but I mean, I think he probably ended up going the second round if he left this year. So the guy played at a high level. I know, the last thing you saw, he steps on Sham Umarov, gives up a sack. That was kind of happenstance. But listen, when that guy was right, he made as big of a jump from year 1 in Orange to year 2 as really anybody we ever seen. And I know you talked to the staff. They talked about the injuries that Hurd had.
Yeah,
they played a big role. He had an ankle
first year.
Yeah, that he's trying to play through. Yep. Here's what I do like. So you bring in Donovan Haslam, that started about half the games at West Virginia. Big body guy, which is different for Ellerby. You bring him in. You bring Ori Williams in. You got position flex with Jesse Perry being able to play right tackle or right guard. Bringing these 2 guys in, it gives you the ability to put your best 5 out there. If Donovan Haslam's your best 5, he starts at guard and Perry's your right tackle. If Ori Williams is the guy, he starts at right tackle and now Perry's your guard. I'm worried about center just because when I watched just a year ago, Sam Pendleton had more issues. Tough guy, lunch pail guy, going to give you a hard day's work, but doesn't have great.
Played hurt. He had injuries last year.
Yeah.
Still.
But there were some times where he gave up a little bit more pressure, wasn't able to create movement. I don't think it's a big step back, but I think you take a little step back from where you were last year.
Bob.
I'm going to agree with both of you, but I'm also going to disagree just a little bit. I think you did take a step back by losing Hurd because I think Hurd did improve greatly over what he was his first year. However, I kind of like the way this group looks. Now, they got to prove it on the field, but if Sanders and Perry both should be a year stronger, they've got experience. So I just really think that you've got potentially an offensive line that maybe doesn't take a big leap over last year, but I also don't see the big step back, although because of the Hurd loss, you could have one.
Yeah, I mean.
So I'm okay with the group, though.
It feels to me, and now you take Satterwhite out of it, because that was your other piece.
Right.
So if you had a seventh guy last year, it was Satterwhite. But I didn't feel like you had as much flexibility as you do this year with Umaroff back and with Haslam and with Perry, who could play. I think Perry's pretty good. We talked about that off air. I like Jess Perry. I like the fact that they could snap their fingers. Okay, Sanders is hurt. We need you to suddenly move over to right tackle. They tell him that right before a game. He goes in, handles his own. It seems like he's got a good attitude. It seems like he's got a bright future.
And Umaroff played well at times.
Yeah, he did.
Not great, but well.
No, I thought he was good for your backup lineman, your first guy in. I thought he was pretty good. But the question here and the problem here is you lose Lance Hurd, and the question is why? Is it that David Sanders said, I'm coming, I'll sign with you, but I'm a left tackle in year 2 or else? Or, well, and Hurd said, I'm not moving to right tackle. Okay. Or is it the fact we can't pay 2 tackles left tackle money? Otherwise, I'm with the rest of you guys. Wouldn't this look better with Hurd and Sanders running it back again at your tackle? Of course it would. So
And Sanders goes to the left tackle.
next year when he's got another year of eligibility.
Correct.
Yeah,
I would have liked that.
Is why didn't that happen?
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with that. That would have been the preference, is you keep Hurd.
Agreed. Kevin, you think close?
Yeah, no, I guess from what I heard, Hurd asked for $3 million, and it's like, all right, well, we're not paying that, so goodbye. But guess what? Kentucky, they didn't pay him $3 million.
I talked to somebody who said the $3 million was an exaggerated number released by Tennessee to make him look bad. That he did not ask for $3 million.
From my standpoint, I'm all about good players, and I'm not about promises. Lance Hurd is a better player at this point than David Sanders. He just is.
I agree.
So,
Yeah, sure.
Left tackle, you stay at right, and then here we go. And let me compensate you a little bit of money for your trouble, because unless David Sanders, if he's not going to go to Ohio State and go start a left tackle for them. So unless he's going to take a step down to, I don't know, name a Louisville, a Clemson, or something like that,
Kentucky.
would he just would he just walk in and start at
Well,
left tackle?
I don't know if I look around the SEC, are there other spots where somebody's looking for a left tackle?
Yeah, you might. Yeah.
I mean, you look. I don't know what LSU's got at left tackle, but I just wonder, is Lane Kiffin going to say, "Hey, you come down here and start immediately"? I mean, all it takes is one.
Yeah.
All it takes is one, and he's got leverage. So I don't know. I think, to me, it made a hell of a lot more sense if Hurd had stayed at left tackle and Sanders stayed at right tackle, and then you've still got another year of eligibility. You can't go pro after your second year, so move to left tackle next year. Why that didn't happen, that may be the question of the offseason.
And I'd really feel good about the offensive line if that had happened.
Yes, yeah. I don't feel bad about it.
Right, I don't
But-
either.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, let's take a look at the pass catchers, the tight ends and the receivers. Well, in this offense, do we really call tight ends pass catchers? But we'll talk about tight ends and receivers next. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. I've let these folks protect my home for years and years. They can do the same for your home or your business. If you're a business owner, they'll take good care. Keep the pests away, keep your customers happy, keep your employees happy. Okay, on your screen you see wide receivers and tight ends. We put it all in one bunch here. Pass catchers. In the blue, once again, those are your true freshmen. Tristan Keys, Tyreek King in the receiving room, Luka Wolf as a tight end, and then Trent Thomas is your transfer in to replace Jack Van Dorselaer. We'll see if Trent Thomas can catch one if it hits him in the face mask. If he can, that'll be one up on Jack Van Dorselaer. All right. What are we thinking in this? Let's start receiver depth. How do you feel? Quick answers. I don't feel great.
I don't feel great. Talent-wise, I like them, but I don't feel great because they haven't produced. And typically a freshman receiver at Tennessee, no matter how good he is or how many stars he has, doesn't typically produce. I think you really miss Chris Brazzell.
I think the loss of Brazzell's big. You got Matthews, you got Staley. Is it going to be Travis Smith, who everybody talked about last year and was hurt, for Darius Jackson? I know a lot of people think it's got to be Tristan Keys, Kevin Simon, or he's going to transfer out. That's all well and good, and I'm sure Heupel knows that. Have you ever seen Heupel play a freshman receiver in his system? I have not.
No, we haven't seen it at all, but hopefully we see it, because if that guy doesn't play, TK, he gone. he's on to the next one. So, but it seems like all the receivers that have played in this system, other than Velus Jones and Tillman, they're the only two that have produced in year one.
Yes.
Even getting transfers in, like the Chris Brazels of the world, he didn't pick up. And
Dante Thornton was better the second year than the
second
first.
year. Yeah. So, and including the guys like the Mike Matthews and the Brandon Staley's of the
Took
world.
Jalen Hyatt a second year before he in the system before he got good.
For sure. So, but in this situation, it's just I know that they've made a significant monetary contribution to some of the guys to TK and TK sounds like a law firm. Tristan Keys and Tyreek King. Let's give these guys give the horse a little bite of the apple so we can keep them around. So we'll see. Hopefully these guys, some of these young guys, get on the field, and that's including Radarius Jackson, who we saw start against Illinois in the bowl game, and then Travis Smith.
Aguilar wouldn't throw to him for the most part.
No, he
was interesting.
He threw him to him one time, and incomplete. And then you got Travis Smith, who's another guy, big wide receiver, he's got ability. So they got guys with ability. But to your point, Jimmy, it's just potential. Potential ain't doing a whole lot for you. We need production.
What do you think about depth at receiver, Bob?
I would like to see more experience. If you had this group and they were all a year older, then I think I'd feel good about them. But I think there's just a lot of unknowns. I was really high on Travis Smith going into this season. Where did that get me?
That's right. Yeah, you.
I had heard people over there at practice just thought Travis Smith, oh my goodness, you ain't going to be able to keep him off field. Of course, he was hurt, so that helped keep him off field. But I would like to see more experience.
Couldn't keep him on the field.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Yeah.
But overall, if you just go by what you have seen and potential, that's a pretty decent looking group.
Your hope is that either Jackson or Smith takes that huge jump like a Staley does.
Yes.
But that's a huge unknown, too.
I would have liked to have seen them get a veteran. Even the kid that everybody said, the kid from Oklahoma State, he's special teams, he'll never catch a ball. He had 50 catches for 500 yards last year. He's a veteran in the room. I think there's something positive about having somebody in the room.
I agree.
It's a very young room.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been a positive to have somebody in there who's just a pro. I mean, you went and got, we're going to talk about it, but you went and got one of those guys at quarterback. I don't think he's going to be your starter, but you got somebody who's a veteran in the room. Let's talk about tight ends.
I would like to say I'm in charge of the free Ethan Davis campaign.
Because
I think he has elite potential if they will use him.
Yes, we saw it at Florida where they dialed it up and used him, and then it's like, okay, we're going to see more of that. Nope, it went away. And I don't understand, when we're talking about hitting Jack Van Dorselaer in the face, I think Ethan Davis could have caught that pass if you'd have had him out there. I know he's not the blocker they like in this offense, but my goodness, if you've got a weapon, use him. If I'm a defensive coordinator, Kevin, I don't want to see Ethan Davis over there.
No, he's a mismatch.
Exactly.
I don't have a linebacker that can cover him. I don't have a safety that I feel good about covering him because he's probably going to outsize him. And once the guy gets the ball in his hands, he has a way of being a running back with the ball in his hands. So, more Ethan Davis, please. I love the wrinkle. So they ran RPO counter and then threw the slipper play out to him for that first touchdown against Florida. Loved it. Never seen it before. Innovative, creative way to get the guy the ball. Man, would love to see more of that. And I'm sure we will. Yeah, it's almost like
I'm not.
It's almost like because of the loyalty that we show some of the upperclassmen, like against Illinois, right? So we get our top guy back,
Miles
Kitselman, and then you don't see much Ethan Davis. So whereas Kitselman was out for the Florida game, Ethan Davis started and got some targets. So
how much more in this offense, you've been over there, how much more do they value a blocking tight end to a receiving tight end?
Well, I mean, we've seen it, right?
Isn't that the issue we're talking about here? I mean,
a little bit, but that's why you get a guy like Trent Thomas who's 6'5" and 260 pounds, and he's basically your extra offensive tackle that can do the dirty work as the inline Y, whereas Ethan Davis is going to be your F. It's like Kitselman was splitting duty. He's not as big as you want, but gave you a hard day's work as the blocker. Trent Thomas you're strictly here to block, son. And then Ethan Davis, go be the athlete that, I mean, really, if you run 11 personnel, Ethan Davis is better than maybe some of your options as a third receiver inside.
Remind me who Brock Bowers blocked at Georgia.
Nobody.
So, and I'm not saying he's as good as Brock Bowers. But the point is,
he's not, but he's in that
Yes.
If you've got a special talent there, okay, maybe he's not a great blocker, but use him on offense.
If I've got a guy that I know the defensive coordinator is going to have a hell of a time matching up with, I use that guy.
Yeah.
It's almost, I don't want to go, it's not this bad, but it's going all the way back to the Butch Jones thing when you've got Jalen Hurd and Alvin Kamara. And I'd have found a way to keep both those guys on the field a lot rather than, well, we can only play one at a time. No, you can get creative. You can put Alvin Kamara is a special player. Hurd was a good running back, so don't bench him. But Kamara's special. You can put him all over the field. Yeah. Why don't you? I kind of feel that way. I don't want to say that he's Alvin Kamara as a tight end, but Ethan Davis is one of the most he's a difference maker on your offense. And in a year where we don't know what you've got behind Staley and Matthews, you just touched on it. Build something around him. Use him more. I just think that's a weapon. Why not take it out? It's an arrow. Take it out of your quiver. Okay. We went over on that segment. When we come back, let's talk about the running backs. Did they do enough in the running back position in terms of the portal? We'll discuss that. We still got quarterbacks to come and our season predictions. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment of our program brought to you by Safety Systems. Isn't it time you got your home into the modern age where you can control everything? Lights, climates, door locks with a button push on your smartphone or your tablet. Visit safetysystems.com today. Give VFL JJ Surlis a call. They'll take good care of you and bring your home into the modern age of technology and cool stuff. All right, speaking of cool stuff, I'm back with Bob Hodge, Kevin Simon, Jimmy Himes right here. We continue to run through Tennessee's roster on what we assume is a blustery day. If you're sitting there wondering why aren't they in their normal studios, because we were prepared for Snowmageddon, and we decided, well, let's just tape this thing and get it out early. So we're in our Sports Source Digital Network studios in the Albert Lounge. Let's talk about the running back situation or the running back room. You've got it on your screen right there. Deshaun Bishop is back. DeJuan Morris back. Played a little last year, got probably more kick returns than he did handoffs. Javen Gordon, I believe it's Javen, from Tulane, transferring in, and then Justin Baker, who's a sophomore. Okay, that's it. That's your running back room. Heupel usually plays three guys. The last couple of years, early on it was rotating three. Last couple of years, it's been much more of a lead back, and then the other guys get the leftovers. I thought they could have used Star Thomas more last year. But Deshaun Bishop was a very solid running back, very good running back. If he can build on what he did last year, I think you're looking at a really good back. I just worry if he sprains an ankle, what have you got there?
I liked Bishop, Thomas, and Lewis a whole lot more than what I like with this group. I mean, the guy from Tulane had 500 yards as a freshman. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, I think Morris has some talent, but he hadn't played enough for me to believe in him yet. I think Star Thomas was underutilized. In fact, I thought he was their best receiver out of the backfield, and they should have thrown more to him than they did. But I think that trio they had last year is better than this trio on paper.
I really wish they could have kept Peyton. I mean, I think if everything else was equal here, but you had Lewis, I would be pretty happy with it going forward. I agree with Jimmy. Should have used Star Thomas more. I like Deshaun Bishop as your starter, and I think you got questions after that.
Agree with both of you guys. Deshaun Bishop, the tone setter, one of the hardest workers on the team, the heartbeat of the offense for all intents and purposes. But then, and I like getting Javen Gordon in terms of picking up a guy. To me, and I know the staff loves Morris, he just runs small. He just plays small. Now, will we see him make a jump in this offseason? He's a true freshman, right? First offseason. Right. And then we haven't seen any of Justin Baker. Same thing. He has a chance to make a jump. So we'll see what they do. But on paper, Jimmy, to your point, don't like it as much as what I do last season. I'm knocking on wood. that Deshaun Bishop doesn't get hurt. For the fortunes of Tennessee's offense in 2026.
Well, especially if your quarterback room remains as it is right now. If Joey Aguilar doesn't get some incredible Hail Mary answered, I I would love to have a better running back situation to where George McIntyre isn't having to carry the team. So the question marks along the offensive line on the Hurd situation, the running back situation here, I would have liked a little bit more wide receiver depth. I don't know that they're setting it up perfectly for a young quarterback. But again, these guys may come through at running back. Gordon seems to me, until he proves otherwise, he's just another guy. They had talked about getting Hollywood Smothers, who was a top portal guy. Who knows? He might have come in here and been a bust, but still, that was a top name. You had the kid at Jacksonville State whose name I never remember.
Cook,
who led the nation in rushing. You didn't get him. I would have liked to have seen them do a little bit more in the portal right there at running back.
Me too.
This may be a need that we're coming back in the fall and saying, oops, made a mistake here or didn't do enough. You agree, Bob?
I agree, and my question there comes down to is maybe this where the money factor started to come in? Because you went out and got defense. You got a lot of defense. Is this maybe where, okay, when we talk about NIL and all this stuff, did it bite you right there? Because Tennessee, for reasons we've discussed, has to be cautious. Because I too would have thought, okay, you're going to add a running back. And don't know anything about the Gordon kid from Tulane, but you would have thought you would have added a running back with a little bit more.
Well, I mean, Star Thomas came in with quite a bit of buzz. He'd had a really good year at Duke.
He did.
More buzz than this kid's got. Doesn't mean he's not going to be good, but just on paper,
and
which
he
is
could
all we're
end up
going
being
with.
great.
Yeah, but on paper,
but still.
I mean, I think Deshaun Bishop has outperformed what many of us thought when he signed at UT.
Include
So
me on that
you never
list.
know. But all right, when we come back, quarterback. We've saved a little extra time. We got quarterbacks to talk about, and then we're going to give you our record predictions for the Volunteers this fall. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Rusty Wallace Kia on Callahan Drive. You know, I bought 5 straight vehicles from Jake Bull and his team. Aside from the very used 1979 Firebird that I got for my 16th birthday, my current Telluride, favorite car I've ever had. Rusty Wallace Kia on Callahan Drive. They do a tremendous job. Get in there. Jake Bull will beat any offer on a Kia from any other dealer anywhere. All right. Let's talk about the position, quarterback. Tennessee goes in, it appears, unless Joey Aguilar wins his court case, which is doubtful. Maybe he does, but it's doubtful. If that doesn't happen, then you're going in next year with George McIntyre as your starter. Faison Brandon, the true freshman, will be battling with Ryan Staub, the transfer from Colorado, you would think. I don't anticipate, if Ryan Staub winds up winning, I'm sure they told him he could compete for the job. If he winds up winning the job, then you've got real issues with George McIntyre because it's set up for him. Your thoughts on the quarterback situation? This time a year ago, we thought it would be Nico Iamaleava, and then it turned into Joey Aguilar and didn't know what to expect. Some said, my goodness, he'll throw all over the yard. Others said he'll throw picks all over the yard. Turns out he did both. Yeah. So where are you on the quarterback situation? Bob Hodge, how do you feel, better or worse?
Okay, can we worse going into last season?
Well, worse coming out of it. Let's just do that.
Because I'm literally psychotic about this because I felt good coming out with Nico. Then I felt horrible. Nico leaves. Oh, I don't like this Aguilar guy. Hey, this Aguilar guy's not too bad. Hey, he's got to leave. And so I right now, I think I probably feel, probably some people on the coaching staff feel this way. A little bit confusing. But what I've seen of McIntyre, very, very limited, I like.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't feel as good about where we're at. It's just a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknown going to George. Now, you know, we all know George has a lot of ability. I guess from my standpoint, it feels like they prefer a point guard type at the quarterback position. What I mean by that, a guy with quick feet that can run all the bubbles and the smoke screens and jailbreak screens. And that's just an extension of the run game, but get it out fast. George, you know, is going to have to play faster to be able to get that done. And I think they might have to call the game a little bit different than what they would for Hendon Hooker, for Mackenzie Milton, who they had down at Central Florida. Joey could do all those things in terms of getting set up and getting the ball out quick. George has a little bit of a longer motion. So it'll be interesting. I think to your point, last segment, when we talk about the running backs, a young quarterback's best friend is the run game.
Yep.
And we saw that with Dylan Sampson and Nico in 2024. Hopefully Bishop, knock on wood, is able to be that for whoever ends up winning the quarterback race this go around.
I feel a lot less optimistic based on the end of the year versus right now. Aguilar put up some great numbers, led the SEC in passing yards. He did have some blips later in the year. However, two things. Somebody over there told me George McIntyre is going to be a great quarterback. My question is when?
When?
Yeah.
When?
Yeah.
The other part of that was somebody said, if you thought Nico Iamaleava looked like he was brittle, this guy is a big concern because he needs to put on weight. He needs to get stronger. You anticipate him running in this offense, right?
Yeah.
You need to have a quarterback that's going to run some.
At least some.
Some.
They ran Aguilar less than I expected.
Right. And if it's 3rd and 4, he needs to get 5 yards. So I am really concerned about that. I think McIntyre, I would agree, is going to be good at some point. I just don't feel confident it's going to be this year.
One thing I like compared to Merklinger, he was accurate. You didn't see much of him, but even in warm-ups, Merklinger wasn't the most accurate guy. Spring game, McIntyre looked. It's a spring game, so I don't put all the weight in the world on that. There's a Hall of Fame to spring game guys who've looked good, but accuracy. You give me one trait in a quarterback aside from clutch, it's accuracy. You can build around everything else if he's accurate. And here's the thing. Let's say he takes a step back in terms of yardage. He can't throw for what Aguilar threw for. I don't think there's any way he can lead the SEC in passing. But if he puts up a Nico-type year, now you don't have the defense to get you in the playoff, I don't think, that you did a couple years ago. But if he puts up a Nico-type year or any other Heupel quarterback-type year, meaning no more than 5 interceptions, you cut your interceptions in half, that can win you a game. Yeah. I mean, you could say the Oklahoma game was lost by a couple of those picks from Joey Aguilar. What happens at Alabama if you don't throw that pick 6 at the end of the first half?
Yeah.
That's Joey Aguilar. If McIntyre is less of a throwing threat but takes better care of the football, maybe it's boring, but you can win some games doing that.
And I will say that I think this coaching staff, Coach Heupel in particular, I'm always surprised by the quarterbacks. I mean, a couple times been a little disappointed. I was disappointed in Joe Milton, a little bit disappointed in Nico's first year. I thought it would be better. Mm-hmm. But then you look at what he did with Hendon Hooker, you look at what he did with Joey Aguilar. So to me, there's room there to not say, oh man, I don't think they're in good shape. I think there's room to say, okay, this could work. And it could work to a good end, especially if, like you said, your interceptions go back to what you had out of Nico and Milton and Hooker.
Yeah, and as much as Milton was a kind of he never lived up to the talent that his arm has. But at the same time, he was an 8-win quarterback. 9-win quarterback. He plays the ball. He's 8-9-win quarterback. That's not horrible. If you can get George McIntyre to that level, I think everybody would take that in his first year starting.
I was really surprised by Aguilar's production, right? Well, maybe I'll be really surprised by McIntyre's. But as we alluded to earlier, he doesn't have that deep ball threat that Chris Brazzell gave Aguilar. And that's a big part of this offense being efficient. So that also makes me wonder how productive McIntyre will be.
Kevin, I was surprised that we did this on this show a few weeks ago. I was surprised Tennessee didn't look for a big arm guy. Even the Ty Simpson's not spectacular on the deep ball. You look at the numbers, Sam Levitt wasn't that kind of guy. The guys they've had, Hendon Hooker and Joey Aguilar, they complete 40% of their passes of 20 yards or more. Nico, Joe Milton, they're around 30%. You saw what happened to the offense. I don't know that George McIntyre in his first year is going to be throwing 40% completions on a deep ball with this receiving core. And when that doesn't happen, this offense kind of drifts.
Yeah, without question, creating explosive plays in the passing game is really the lifeblood to this offense, staying on schedule and scoring points at a I mean, we're number one offense in the SEC. Do I expect us to be able to keep up with at that pace? No. Probably fall back to 3, 4, 5. But if we're 3, 4, 5 and our defense jumps up into we'll just say average by SEC standards, 7, 8, 9, will that get us into the college football playoff? I think it very well could. But it's going to have to be complementary football on both sides of the ball.
We'll leave people hanging with that note of positivity right there.
Teaser.
And then when we come back, we're going to give you our record predictions for the 2026 Volunteers. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. John Pennington, joined by Jimmy Himes, Kevin Simon, Bob Hodge. All right, they've rebuilt their roster. They've gone into the portal more than ever. New defense, new defensive coordinator, new defensive assistant, strength and conditioning coaches, new strength program, new nutritionist, new quarterback. Gentlemen, it's time for predictions. We know Tennessee has a 9-game SEC schedule now, and you've got a road trip to Georgia Tech. I always wanted to play good non-conference games. Mm-hmm. They did it, and now unluckily, they got Georgia Tech, who's pretty good. I like the game, but it's dangerous. Bob Hodge, you want to start by giving us your prediction for 2026?
Nope. I'd like to go last, please. Thank you very much. I'll go first. I mean, obviously, you've got a gap in there between floor and ceiling. I'm going to lean into the floor a little bit, and I want to say 8-4. I really think they're an 8-4 football team. Kind of a repeat of this year. Not a bad football team by any stretch, but just a little short. But you struggle at South Carolina. You struggle at Arkansas historically a little bit. I'm going to say 7-5.
So then we'll have to get into the question is, who's the coach in 2027?
But here's the deal. I think he could go 7-5 and be improving and be setting the table for the next season, and it's not a firing offense. I really believe that. You can be getting better. Anyway.
All right, we got a 7-5. Kevin Simon, what are you doing?
I'm going to have to disagree. For my heart's sake, 7-5. Oh, no. Lordy. I'm going to bet on the come in the areas that we're talking about the defense, talking about strength conditioning, talking about being as fast on the last or as good in the fourth quarter as you were early in the game. 9-3, somehow, some way. I think a disappointing thing for me is in some of our losses, we just haven't been competitive. I hope that we are competitive throughout all games and maybe just come up short a few times, but it's one of those things like we can say, hell yeah, that's our guys out there on the field. So it's a little bit more fight, a little bit more not letting the rope slip. I'm going to go 9-3. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
9-3. Jimmy, what are you doing?
Last year, I picked 8 leaning toward 9. Now I'm looking at 8 leaning toward 7. So do I take 7-5 like Bob? I'm really close to that. I think Tennessee's going to win all their non-conference games. I think they go 4-4 in the SEC, so I've got them winning 8.
Okay, so 7-5, 9-3, 8-4. So I get to
10-2.
That's right. I get 10-2. I'm going 8-4. I think it's 8-4, and I'm giving him a benefit of the doubt because I think Heupel's a pretty good coach. Mm-hmm. I think he's made some pretty good moves. This was a tough year. Nobody's saying that, but most people around the country, not Knoxville, but most people around the country, when you lost your quarterback at the end of spring practice, you saw the projections of 6 or 7 wins. Didn't do that. Then you take your top 2 corners, arguably, well, not even arguably, the best player on your team, and Jermod McCoy, doesn't play. Take that away. Mm-hmm. You still wound up going 8-4. I know you lost to Vandy and it was ugly at the end. I get it. And I know that Tennessee fans don't want to go 8-4. 2 years in a row isn't acceptable. But considering this is a new SEC world where you play 9 games, I think people are going to have to get used to 8-4. Not just Tennessee. I think there are a lot of schools that are going to have to get used to more losses. I think this is kind of a bounce back year. If they're 8-4 and George McIntyre shows by the end of the year, you're saying, oh, we got something here. Yeah. That's one kind of 8-4. So I think they could be okay.
I'm just going to say that I don't think 7-5 has to be a disaster.
All right, we got to go.
You're building a team.
Thank you, Bob. That's what he said. He's in. That's on the record. Kevin Simon, thank you. Jimmy Himes, thank you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week back here, hopefully in our studio if there's no storms. And if there were no storms today, just laugh at us for taking the day off. We'll see you next time. Subscribe to the Sports Source Digital Network, too.